Hey guys, Ruminating Reaper here. So I'm back from seeing Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere. This is written and directed by Scott Cooper and is adapted from the novel Deliver Me From Nowhere by Warren Zanes, who is also an executive producer. Obviously at this point, music biopics are a pretty grown-worthy prospect, but this one actually seemed pretty promising, with it being a focus on a specific point in Bruce's career. You know, there was a lot of potential here for a more personal and deeper story. And in general, as of recent, biopics have been open to doing more interesting stuff. The pinnacle, of course, being Better Man, an absolutely fantastic movie that we as a species failed. So I was hoping this would keep up that momentum. But is this a rare music biopic to break away from the established Walk Hard template? Let's find out. So the film is set in the early 1980s, with Bruce Springsteen fresh off the smash success of the River Tour and primed to break out. Naturally, his record label wants more new music, more hit singles to really ride that wave. But Bruce has other ideas, instead going smaller, recording an entire album called Nebraska, entirely in a bedroom of a rental house in Colts Neck, channeling some deep troubles from his own childhood. The project is, of course, wildly unconventional, but Bruce, as an artist looking to create something meaningful, fights tooth and nail to preserve its raw, emotional sound. So much like what the superhero genre has gone through the last couple of years, we have definitely hit market saturation when it comes to music biopics. A lot of them are, awards-bait films that follow all the same tropes lampooned in Walk Hard. So to stand out, you gotta do something interesting and different. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, Deliver Me From Nowhere delivers exactly that. So the film gets off to a very, very strong start, with its two focal points, Bruce's childhood struggles and the music, set up in very strong fashion, with an opening flashback that leads into an electric live performance of Born to Run. And yes, those are Jeremy Allen White's own vocals. He really put the work in and it really paid off. Obviously, yes, there are some of Bruce's actual vocals utilised here, but a lot of it is Jeremy's, and again, it really paid off. In general, he is fantastic. He looks just enough like Bruce at certain angles that you can buy into his portrayal. But yeah, he does a really fantastic job selling this troubled soul battling a raging storm in his mind. It is absolutely magnetic stuff and really carries the film along, particularly through a kind of uneven first act that, treads kind of conventional waters. Obviously, after that very strong start, we sort of dip our toes into, usual music biopic staples. We get the creative inspiration montages, and, seriously, the Mansion on the Hill one is so hilariously unsubtle, it actually borders on Walk Hard territory. And then we get a lot of talk of Bruce being a troubled genius, with these repeated monologues from his manager, John Landau, played by eldest boy, Jeremy Strong, who is great as this sort of guiding light in this sort of uncertain time in Bruce's career. But he gets a lot of repeated monologues that are very much sort of hammer home points that we were already shown. And you'll be relieved to learn that that clunky hole in the floor monologue from the trailer is not in the film. There's also a subplot involving a sort of romance with a single mother, Faye, played by Odessa Young, that never really goes anywhere and basically feels like a plot device to get Bruce to the point where he confronts his mental struggles. But once we get through all those, biopic weeds, and the sort of focus on the music and his mental struggles come back into focus, the film really clicks into place. Obviously, we get a lot of an exploration of Bruce's quite troubled childhood with his equally troubled alcoholic father Douglas, played in a reliably fantastic turn by Stephen Graham. And it's very interesting exploring those moments and sort of seeing how it shapes Bruce as an artist and a creative, and seeing that sort of, seeing him channel that in the music. It's very, very interesting stuff. And it actually gets quite raw throughout, as the emphasis is very much on Bruce's mental health. Obviously, him using the music as a sort of form of therapy to explore these deep rooted troubles, but also a recurring thing of him sort of isolating himself, out of fear of having to face these problems. It's all very, very interesting stuff and hits really hard. It doesn't sugarcoat it and does not exactly pull its punches. Sure, there are points where it perhaps cuts itself a bit short. Some potentially interesting stuff isn't fully explored, but for the most part, it really digs deep and hits hard. It's very, very interesting stuff to watch throughout. And it also, but even within that, there are some quite well-placed humorous moments, particularly from the character Mikey, played by Paul Walter Hauser, always wonderful. He initially helps Bruce record the songs, and yeah, he's a wonderful presence, as you'd expect. Of course, backing this, sort of deeper, intimate tale of a interesting point in Bruce's career, we have, yes, a very Springsteen heavy soundtrack. Obviously, the Nebraska album is the focus here, and so a lot of that is played here. And yes, it does play the hits, like, of course, Born to Run and Born in the USA. And we do get those very satisfying moments of watching the music come together. You do sort of feel that smile on your face as those iconic songs form. But also, those moments do come from a deeper, darker place, and so it does feel quite cathartic as well. There's also a selection of non-Bruce songs in here, which are unexpected, but I think do serve the themes of the story very well and are well played throughout. It's shot fairly well as well. Obviously, a lot of neon city streets and wide countryside shots. Obviously, Scott Cooper is kind of a workman-like director, but not a lot of distinctive flair. But he does direct it all solidly enough, and it does look good overall. But I think what really brings this whole thing home for me is the end of the film. There's no triumphant Bohemian Rhapsody-esque concert scenes to really tap along to and fist in the air, feel good stuff. The film, to its credit, actually in its final stretches really commits to the heavy emotional core. The focus is not on the music by the end, but of course on Bruce is his mental health and his relationship with his parents. And yeah, the emphasis on those in those final stretches really hits hard, and it does deliver a raw and emotionally satisfying conclusion to a raw and quite emotionally compelling piece. Overall, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, overcomes a rocky, slightly conventional start to deliver a raw and quite hard-hitting look at a very pivotal point in Bruce Springsteen's career, carried along by a magnetic turn from Jeremy Allen White. Out of 10, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere gets a 7.5. So, let me know down in the comments. Have you seen Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere? What did you think of it? What's your favourite music biopic? Are you a Springsteen fan? Do you think this film did the boss justice? And what did you make of Jeremy Allen White's performance? And do you think he will land an Oscar nomination? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.